Hello, Peter Graham. Lovely to see you.
Hi Louise, how are you?
So, everyone, I'll just have both of us on the screen so you can see. But I'm joined here today with Peter Graham from Redefining Retirement, and we have a really big common interest, and that's this. And obviously, those of you who know me know my background with the pink hard hat and female financial resilience, and particularly helping women be more confident around their money story. But beyond that, having a life of wealth and well-being. And one of the things that attracted me to working alongside or talking with Peter is what he's doing. So, Peter, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing as well, so that we can share your wisdom with both of our audiences?
Okay. Well, my background was that I was a financial advisor for 50 years. Now, that's unusual to say the least, that anyone stays in the one profession for 50 years, but I did, and I thoroughly enjoyed it and did quite well. My clients were very happy and I never got sued or anything like that. So I had a wonderful time. But unfortunately, on one day, I was told that I had 6 days to live. So that sort of brought the whole thing to a bit of a sudden end. Obviously, that didn't work, but it meant a change in direction because I had to dispose of my business. And in fact, there's a story in what you do when you're given 6 days to live. All the aspects of financial planning and all your estate planning and the like, which I can talk about on another occasion. But for some time, going back to about when I was 58 years of age, I was trying to work out what would I do in retirement? How would I just keep myself occupied in retirement? And I decided that I would do what I'm doing now, and that is that I would teach retirement. Not the financial stuff. There's too many people out there doing that now.
Yeah.
I teach the harder part of retirement, which is the lifestyle issues. And the biggest one is this. How do you fill in 30 years? Because it's quite possible these days that people will retire for 30 years. Now, that's 11,000 days you've got to fill in. 16 hours a day for 11,000 days. And that's a lot of filling in to do. And you can play a lot of golf and you can do what you want to do, but for 30 years. So it's a serious issue that I'm talking about. So I now teach people how to retire. I've worked out that there are 60 things that people need to think about before they retire and after they retire. And I teach those 59 things. One of them was money. I teach the other 59.
And look, that's where you and I are really similar as well, in that I agree with you on that there are enough people out there talking the money side. My book does deal a little bit with money philosophy, but like you, I'm more interested in the other aspects. And the research that I did was around wealth and well-being. And I'll come back to that later. But what I'd love to do, I do want to backpedal to that first moment where you were told you had 6 days to live. That's huge. I mean, there's a whole book in that. And above and beyond the, tidying up your legacy, I guess, ultimately, what did you really do in that time? Like, please tell us a little bit about what that 6 days was like. Were you working furiously? Were you, did you go and travel? Did you just spend time with, tell us, what did you do?
When I was told, I did something very unusual. Now, let's talk about what most people would do. They'd panic. No, what am I going to do? And this is terrible. I didn't do that. I just said to the professor, I said, well, I don't think that's a good idea. What can we do about it? And she was taken aback by that because most people do exactly the opposite. And so very quickly I worked out, well, I had that financial stuff to do, but I had the people thing to do as well. So I spent as much time as possible talking with the family and basically making certain I had that aspect of my life, which was well organised at any rate. But and I had good relationships with my children and my grandchildren and the like. But I sat down and I worked out that having been in business a long time, you know very clearly that when you've got a problem, you've got to have a plan to solve the problem. And so I sat down and I worked out what I would do every day for as long as I lived. Now, obviously I wasn't going to live long, but I thought, well, I think they're wrong. And I'm not talking about this, oh, I'm going to beat at business. I didn't say that to myself once. I just said, I'm just going to do the best possible thing I could do. And so I worked to a plan, and every day I lived that plan.
Can you give us an idea of what your daily plan was?
Well, I had a mantra of 7 things that I made certain that I followed every day. And the first one was that I would never, ever give up, ever. Just I was going to persist with this no matter what. That was the first thing. Next, I decided that.
When you say never give up, you mean fighting for your life?
Yeah. Most people, look, I talk to a lot of people now about cancer and death and everything else because of what I've been through. And I can tell very clearly whether they're going to live or not, just when I'm talking with them. It's just that attitude that they have towards living or life or family or whatever the case may be, where they just never quite have that commitment that is necessary. So I decided that I would never give up. That was the first thing. And then I decided that I would not once watch television, listen to the radio, or read a newspaper. Now, it wasn't that I didn't need to, obviously, if I had 6 days to live, but the reason I didn't do it was different to that. The reason I didn't do it is that they're so negative, they are so dishonest, and there's so much rubbish, absolute rubbish on television and in newspapers and the like. And so that was one of the things that I did. Another thing that I did is that I would not go near sugar.
Interesting.
Now, cancer loves sugar.
Yeah.
Absolutely loves sugar. And any doctor or any, look at on any TED talk you like, they talk about the dangers of sugar. And it is an absolute shocker. It's an absolute shocker. Now, I wasn't really big on it at any rate, but I just got less and less. And even now, I hardly ever touch it. I avoid it wherever possible. Be kind to my wife and I'll have the dessert that I'm given, but I wouldn't go and necessarily buy that when I was out. Another one that I did every day is I walked 10,000 steps. Now, we've heard the American Medical Association has said that you should walk 10,000 steps a day. And so I did, and I decided I'd do that for as long as I could. Now, towards the end, when I didn't really think that I would live, I hadn't given up, but I didn't think I would live. It was getting so bad. I struggle with the 10,000 steps.
Mm.
Another thing that I did was every single day I would go out and meet people. I'd never allow anyone to come to my house because I figured that was the wrong attitude. The attitude was for me to physically go out and see people and shake their hands and have a cup of coffee and talk and the like. And I did that every single day. Now, I was on a drug called immunotherapy. Now, immunotherapy was a brand new drug that had just been developed. It had been in America for about 14 or 15 months before I had it. And I was one of the first in Australia to be on the program. I initially meant to go on a trial, but it declined so quickly In a matter of 2 weeks before I was told I was sick, I went from a healthy environment to stage 4 cancer, riddled liver, lung, and bones.
Wow.
And that was in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So obviously I had a very rare form of cancer, and that was for sure. But it was moving very, very quickly. Now, immunotherapy is a brand new therapy in the world where the problem that exists with normal cancers has been not solved, but it's on its way to being solved. And that is that cancers get bigger and bigger and bigger. Mm. And whenever something like the immune system comes in to attack the cancer puts up a barrier. And on one side, you've got the cancer, and on the other side, you've got the immune system. And every time the immune system got through the barrier, the cancer would change. Mm. And so the immune system was struggling to ever fight the cancer. Back in, I think it was 1939 or 30, something like that, a doctor thought of this immunotherapy. And it wasn't until about 7 years ago that they worked out how to make it work. Mm-hmm. And I was luckily on one of those people where it was able to work. And all an immunotherapy does.
That was your sixth thing? Sorry? That was your sixth thing you lived by, like just fighting it using the best material?
No, it's nothing to do with material. It's just
you were talking about the 6 philosophies that you live by each day that you would do.
Yeah.
And then immuno and the therapy that you participated in was your 6th thing?
Oh, no. The doctors gave me immunotherapy, and I had to work out how I was going to live, because the key with immunotherapy is it's not immediate. In fact, it takes time. And what has to happen is the immunotherapy gets into the body and it slowly breaks down the barrier that is stopping the immune system from working. The immune system is perfectly strong enough to beat any cancer that's out there.
Yeah.
And the problem that we've had with cancers is that there's been this barrier which has stopped the immune system from being able to work effectively. Yeah. So they told me, in fact, the professor said to me, look, I want to ask you 2 things. The first is that you would not participate in any single alternative treatment. And I said, yeah, that's fine. And the second thing is that all you have to do is to live. I've been given 6 days to live. And she's talking about all I had to do was live. I didn't understand that. But anyway, I went through the trials, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse, and I got worse and worse and worse. And one day I knew it was at the end. I'd said my goodbyes to everybody, and I got into bed the night before this event, and I thought, no, 6 things. I must get up, dress up, and show up every day. And I went through the 6 things, and I went to sleep. The next morning, I got out and I sat on the edge of the bed, and I thought, hang on, something's happened. And I knew instantly that the immunotherapy had cut in. And suddenly, on one day, I knew I was going to live. So it was a hell of a battle. It was a huge battle that I had to fight. Weak as could be, couldn't do anything, couldn't move. Towards the end, couldn't move, couldn't do anything. It was a shocker. And then it took me about 2 years to recover from that. A bit longer, actually.
Yeah.
It took a long time to get back to a point where I could go off the treatment.
Yeah.
Because the cancers keep coming up, and they'd come up all over the body, and they had to be nailed. Every one of them had to be nailed.
You live a little bit, and then it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back a little. in terms of your recovery beyond that?
Yeah. It was really hard work, because every now and again something would pop up. For example, I ended up, of all things, getting a cancer in a bone. So I imagine it's in the bone marrow, but it wasn't a bone marrow cancer, but it was in the bone, and they nailed that with radiotherapy. And they still look at every day. Oh, sorry, every time I go for treatment, they just make certain that it hasn't moved and hasn't. So there's been a whole lot of things that have gone on, but now it's got to a stage where I'm now off the treatment. And for those people that have no insurance, like trauma insurance or life insurance or health insurance, the total cost to the Australian government, to my health fund and me over a 4-year period was $1,200,000.
Wow.
Now,
It is so interesting that so 1,400,000?
1,200,000.
200,000, yeah. You're the first person that's ever said that to me. I mean, your story is remarkable. You're the second person I've ever spoken to that's been given, one lady I spoke to had 48 hours to live, so a really similar but different experience, but where you, in one moment, your life changes and you have to decide what you're going to do in that moment. She was rushed into surgery, whereas you were given 6 days, and in that decided how you were going to live 6 days and then beyond. I've never actually ever spoken to someone who's put, and it's probably a testament to who you are and what you've done, but who's put a financial cost on what that cost, in regards to the insurances and the policies and what you paid out and what is a life worth. I was watching a program with my husband the other day, what is your life worth? And the truth is there are people out there who just think, I don't need the insurance anymore. And certainly as you start to pay down and off assets, your risk is reduced. But no one's expecting to be in a scenario of fight or flight to the very, for their life like you have. I mean, it's a remarkable story and testament to just who you are as how you've come through and beyond it. So from that point, you decided, I'm here, I'm alive, I want to go on to teach people to live.
Yeah, I do all that, but let me go back just one point, if I could, that I didn't mention, and that is that one of the things I always wanted to do, many years as I was a financial advisor, was to die broke. I had worked out that it was an absolute nonsense to keep chasing money, more and more and more and more and more. Once you've got enough, you've got enough, and that's it. You don't need any more. And so it's a psychological reason that people chase money. So I decided that I would die broke. And I was able to be ready for that. In fact, if I had died, my son, who was the executor, would have said there's no money for the funeral. And the reason for that is that I'd already given my money away in trusts and that type of thing. And I had prepared myself well for an event which I never expected. And so when the time came, I was able to finalise those issues and be ready to die broke. I don't know, I've only now got about $7 in my pocket, and that's it, because I live that way now. But nowadays, getting back to what I'm doing now, what I have learned is that people don't retire very well. Given 40 years to prepare for this event, very few are prepared. So my target market falls into two. There's pre-retirees, 50 plus and still working. And they're the people that need help in the preparation towards retirement. And then there's people in retirement. And so that's really what I'm doing now.
most of the people I work with are in the 50 plus. Some of them are retired or on their way, hoping to be retired soon. But really what I'm about is lifestyle, so in the sense of living well, very much like you. My background has been property and property development. Before that was market research and qualitative research. And I guess I came through a period where I had studied stress and its impact on people and had lived through it, obviously, as a developer. So I took that academic know-how and then put it into a communication framework so people could better understand where they sit, looking at stress through the lens of success. Because no one really likes to say I'm stressed. Most of us, even if we can tell that, our head, our neck is stiff or whatever, or maybe we're not concentrating very well, we're snapping at the kids, we're not sleeping really well. Most of us like to think we're resilient and we'll be fine. We've got it completely under control. I call it stoic delusion. This sense that we're fine because we're still standing. And I think for many of us, and my first book on resilience talked about certainly the 5 pillars of mental, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual. But I was saying there's a 6th pillar, particularly for women, and that's financial resilience, in the sense that you can't just turn a blind eye, particularly as a woman, you can't turn a blind eye to the numbers in your life. You have to pay attention to those, because the fastest growing homeless demographic, as you're aware, is women over the age of 55. And we need to pay attention to those numbers along the way. So as I was writing the book, I spoke to countless women who many of them articulate, very educated, been working all their life, who woke up one day and found they had nothing. And it was 2 or 3, a series often, not even normally one, but normally 2 or 3 bad decisions that put them in a place they couldn't have imagined. And to that woman, I wrote the book to basically say, this is about Money 101, know the basics, and then beyond that, learn to live well. Because like you said, you don't need a lot of money to live financially independently. You just need to be able to be a good steward of it. And so the work that I do now in coaching, men and women, but there's basically 4 types. So the battery hens are hardworking, hard on themselves. Many of them are well rewarded for what they do, but they're not really living well. In fact, they're producing egg after egg after egg after egg. And, they're so used to that level of reward that they just don't know how to switch off or wind down. And for them, a lot of the work that I do is about stepping back from that to a place where you can breathe again and begin to just enjoy life. And there's a whole series that we go through to get your life back, really. Then there's the mouse, low wealth certainty, low well-being certainty. And that's normally someone for whom they're recovering from an expectation hangover. Like something has happened and they've lost confidence along the way, and it's only a moment in time. I call them mouse moments because this is not a personality test. It's basically it's a way of identifying how you might feel so you can move beyond that. And then there's the monks, high well-being, low wealth. And this is, this group has been, for the demographic I've been talking to, often women, where there's or a partner where they've depended on someone else and turned a blind eye to the numbers in their life and not necessarily looked at who's paying. And then lastly, the unicorn, the rarest of the 4, high wealth certainty, high well-being certainty. And that isn't about what you have. That's about knowing that regardless of circumstances, you're going to be okay. And so living that unicorn life, it's not even a destination, because many of us can battle with that. This is all about how you feel. So it's about teaching yourself to be, like you said, live each day your life in miniature, exactly to the philosophies that you want to live by. And that's ultimately what I teach. So when I'm coaching people, it's about, for many of them, having more joy in their life, having more what they perceive as balance, organising their thoughts and their cash flow and their situations so that they can live better. And ultimately preparing them now so that they never have to worry about what ifs. And, you know, so like you, I'm an advocate for getting your ducks in a row so that you can step back from a situation and not panic and go into fight or flight when life might give you an interruption.
It's interesting what you say, because I'm 77 years of age, and as I say, too young to retire. And as you get older, you begin to realise there's a few key elements that are worth getting right. I had to give a talk recently to a group of retirees, and I said to the organiser, "What do you want me to talk about?" "Well, I don't know. You talk about whatever you want to talk about." And I thought, I'm going to talk about something that I know nothing about now. And so I decided that I would spend 3 weeks researching and studying enough so I could deliver a paper on cognitive decline. That's Alzheimer's and depression and that type of thing, dementia. And I did. It was I had a wonderful time. Interestingly enough, as you would know, is that if you deliver something, you learn more than the people that are listening. And I learned a tremendous amount about cognitive decline and how to avoid, as best you can, or slow down the possibility of Alzheimer's. You can't avoid it totally, I might add, but you can slow it down and make it less likely that you're going to go down that route. If you even get it, you're going to slow it down. And it involves a lot of the things that you're talking about. For example, how many hours sleep do you get a night? And most people think, oh, it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. And sleep deprivation is one of the great problems we've got out there. And it leads to a lot of these issues we don't want, like heart attack and stroke and cognitive decline and depression and all the rest of it. So sleep is correct. Then there is the ability to relax, the ability to actually slow down, to meditate in the morning where you turn everything off. And the way I've developed my life now is that I have a morning startup procedure and an evening close down procedure. So every morning I get up and I do the things which are necessary to get me on the straight and narrow. And so I spend time doing correct breathing. Then I do meditation, and then I will start to do any of the work that needs to be done. And at night time, I've got a range of things to do, but one of the things to do is I close my mind down so that I never get into bed and think, oh God, I've got to do that. No, I don't do that. I've cleaned all that up in my mind. And making certain that your health is right gives you longevity. Now, you might get melanoma like I had, and with a bit of luck, you might live. Currently, about 35% people live. When I got it, it was 100% death rate. And then what happens is you've got heart disease, and you've got all these other problems that can develop out of bad health habits. And so it's well worthwhile concentrating on the really important things every day.
You know what? I agree with you. And I think I was talking to you about it when we were talking the other day. And I'm a big fan of the Sherzai Institute and the work that they're doing around nutrition, exercise, the ability to unwind, rest, and optimization, being able to actually do something that challenges you every day. And they've got a great app on that if you're ever interested. It's the Neuro app. But the point, and that was developed by Dean and Ayesha Sherzai. The thing I really found poignant about that is this couple really walk the talk when it comes to brain health. And they found that when they were talking about avoiding Alzheimer's, and they said 90% of Alzheimer's is avoidable, no one was listening because most of the audience don't have it. And so they think, oh, that's another day, right? So they then turned their program around and talked about optimizing brain health. And that's when they started getting some tension and traction. And the truth is that, you know, where they came together was they had brilliant grandparents, like brilliant minds, and their lives were cut short. They actually got Alzheimer's. And the old myth was that if you keep your mind active and you keep, you know, you look after your nutrition and you look after your exercise, then you should be okay. That's what we all were brought up thinking.
Absolutely.
But the thing that they're missing in that recipe for success is actually sleep and the ability to unwind. So with my battery hands, for instance, they know, we know we're not sleeping. I used to be a battery hand. That's how I developed the tool. But it's not like you can just switch it on and off. Like if you're having trouble sleeping, you're having trouble sleeping for a reason. And so there is a process you have to educate yourself around that. But what's even more important is when you ask people how deliberately do you schedule into your day time to unwind, where you actually do nothing, where you sit, where you breathe, where you meditate, where you read, where you walk, where you're out in nature. Many don't. And that can be the secret sauce that will give you longevity or not. So I completely agree with you on all of that. And it's like you were saying in terms of the retirement, you know, you have 59 things to outside of the money side to get right. And for the audience that I'm talking to, mostly, you know, they're looking, the retirement might feel a little way away yet. And yet it doesn't have to be. And I think the way you prepare yourself now should be the way that you skip gaily into your future. You know, where you go, I've got a lot going on that I'm excited about. I continue to be learning and challenging myself. I'm meeting people regularly. I'm eating well. I'm sleeping well, and I'm having fun and exciting experiences again. And I think one of the ways you know you're truly alive, and this is what I found having come through my own story, where I was that battery hand. I was on a, you know, I found myself on a freeway one day. My body had just shut down. Inconveniently, I was driving at the time, so it was almost a life-changing experience, obviously. And that was the point I realised I'm alive and I'm not really living. So I need to really change the way I do life, because you'll find that if you live blindly to those signals, your health or your relationships they catch up with you. They tap you on the shoulder, and then one day you realise, oh my gosh, I have less here than I thought, whether it's health or relationships typically. And so if you can get your ducks in a row early, then you're not in that place. Peter, it has been so good speaking with you today. Where can my audience find you? Where's the best way to find you? And I'll make sure that we can send this out to them all.
Well, my website is redefiningretirement.com.au. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn. Just put in Peter Graham Retirement and they'll find me, and on there all my phone numbers and the like. Do you mind if I just go back to something you said?
Sure.
I remember I was talking to a doctor once, and he was saying how he met a guy one day, and the chap said to him, I've got a problem. And he said, I've got a real problem, and that is that I have a panic attack. Mm. Now, when you're the CEO of a large organisation, that doesn't cut too much. That's not too good. Mm. Having a panic attack. And the guy had some very simple treatment, which I'd be happy to share with anyone who calls me. And the doctor said to him, you don't have a panic problem. And the chap said, oh, yes, I don't. And he said, when did this first start to happen? And he said, oh, about 6 months ago. And of course, the next obvious question is, well, what happened then? Well, my brother died. Mm. And he said, and you went back to work that day, didn't you? Yes. You have a grieving problem, not a panic problem. And he explained how to do it. And what people don't understand are the causal effects of what happens when you get involved in certain habits.
Mm.
Now, you can eat all you like, but sometime there's going to be a price to pay. And it's like alcohol. You can drink alcohol all you like, but there's a price to pay. Little minor things like heart stroke, cognitive decline, and the rest of it. People really need to sit down and think out cause and effect. What am I doing which is going to have this effect in the future?
Mm.
If you don't know what those effects are, do what I do and do research on the internet through TED and many other places, or talk to your doctor or talk to your psychologist or whatever the case may be. There are so many people out there that can help us as humans make certain we've got a better chance of doing well.
Yeah, that's great. And I think also the flip side, and the thing I do with a lot of my coaching clients is focus forward and think about who you want to be in the future, your future self. Because every day you're just building towards that person and you work back from her or him. You go, this is who I was speaking to a fellow the other day. He's lost 25 kilos since I saw him last, but his whole presentation, he looks actually like he'd aged backwards. And he told me the story that, he really just focused on, once he got his head in the game of, I'm not just a fat guy kidding myself. He said, once he got in the game of, I'm healthy, I'm a healthy human, then everything else fell into place. What would a healthy human do? What would a healthy human do? So it was one habit after another, which he gave up the smoking, and then he gave up all the habits that went with the smoking, and then he reduced his food intake, and changed some of his diet and went to less processed foods. And then he bought a whole suits and outfits that met with that. What would a healthy human do? And if you can ask yourself that question, is this decision today moving me closer to or away from my goal? Then it also is just another way of carving that fish.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Could I just make one other comment? This is meant to be about retirement and that type of thing, and it's not going that way, but let me make this comment. To give your listeners a bit of an idea of what the problems are in retirement, people think it's easy, and maybe it is for some people. When I'm out talking to retiree groups, I always say, if I mention the word retirement, what's the first word that comes to mind? And there's heaps of them. I mean, there's travel and grandchildren, and it goes on and on and on. But there's one word which has come up 57% of the respondents have mentioned this one word, and that is boredom. Now, I don't know how you can be bored in a word like this. I have no idea. It's just so interesting and so many things to do. But if 57% of the people find that retirement is boring, there's a problem. And the problem is this. If you find life boring, you become boring. And when you become boring, people don't associate with you. And when you don't associate with you, you go into loneliness. You go into loneliness, you go into depression, and it gets worse and worse.
Mm.
It's so important to prepare for this period. You don't know how long it's going to be, but it might be 11,000 days. And the worst thing is that if you take the 11,000 days and you break them up into wakeable hours, there's 176,000 wakeable hours. The average Australian in retirement watches, in that 30-year period, 99,000 hours of television and screen time.
Mm.
So the average retiree is spending 9 hours a day on television, phones, tablets, or computers, or going to the movies. That's a disaster. I mean, if somebody has on their epitaph, at least I lived 30 years and I was able to watch 99,000 hours of television in that time, you've got to be joking. This is a huge issue that we have in retirement. Yeah. And that is, people never really sit down and think about how they're going to fill in the time, the 11,000 days it might be for people.
I know. I think that's a travesty. And when you told me that the other day, it was something I really thought about. That that boredom is the thing that can slowly kill you. It's not necessarily a heart attack. So, and I think the more you can feel your life now, and find what fills you up and give back, be in a position where you're of service, then I think that's a huge part of it. But thank you, Peter, for your time. I know we're out of time now, but thank you for today. I hope it was useful. For those of you know where to find me, lufitzbaker.com. And yeah, if I'd love to hear from you about what your key takeaway from today has been and what one thing you might apply in your life hearing this now, because really that's the whole point.
So if I could just finish off with one thing,